I'm Chris McAlilly.
And I'm Katie Heckle.
And we are the Co-op, and we're going through a series of videos that are amplifying a summer Bible reading plan that we've been doing with a group of college students in a summer internship program in Mississippi. And we wanted to open up the Bible reading plan for you to engage with us. You can find the link to it. You can get a PDF copy of the actual Bible reading plan. But these conversations are just expanding the conversation and giving you some additional entry points. And this week, we're talking about mental health and wholeness as a part of the journey of following God that includes kind of caring for ourselves as whole people. And I thought I might just ask you, Katie. So Katie's really unique as one of our guides and our leaders in this conversation, because you have both sides of your vocational journey. You have ministry side, and then also you're a mental health provider. And I wonder if you might just be willing, as we get into this conversation, to tell us about your journey.
Sure.
I know you did college ministry for a decade, and then you decided at a certain moment to shift and go get training to be an LPC. So why did you do that? Like, how did that happen for you that you decided to engage mental health as a component of your vocational life?
I appreciate the question. For me, being up close for over a decade doing college ministry, you kind of see ministry on a large scale of doing the program part, but then you also are hosting conversations with people, making space for them. And so as the years went on in ministry, I was having more and more conversations with students that were wrestling with just the human part of them, the broken parts. Sometimes it was connected to like sin and brokenness, but other times it was just this emotional overwhelmedness, anxiety, this mental component that I was not equipped to provide care. And so my conversations started to often be like, let me connect you with my friend that does therapy and counseling, and let me kind of be a bridge to get you the help that you need, and I can continue to support kind of in a pastorally kind of way. But I recognized that there was just a need, and when my week started filling up with more and more people to have one-on-one conversations, I started paying attention to I need some more training in this if I'm gonna help even in the spiritual way. And I felt like the Lord, this was kind of starting to kind of like peel back my identity and my thoughts of what I was going to be doing for my whole life. And then there's just started to be opening like a window of, hey, maybe I should go back to school. And this kind of all started really stirring, during the pandemic, 2020. Everybody's, we're all going through this traumatic experience together, and in different ways. We're all in the same ocean, but we're all on different boats. And so the Lord just showed me that there was a need for his people, his children, to be met in a way that I couldn't meet them at the time. And there's people that were equipped to do that, but I was feeling the Lord pull me towards getting that training, getting to this place where I can be on the ground, kind of in the danger zone of it all, in places where people really need help, and to be equipped to then do it. So I knew that if I was going to do it, if I was going to take this step, if the Lord was calling me to this, then he was going to be faithful to still allow me to carry this ministry part. So working at the Co-op is a big, for me, fruit of the Lord's faithfulness to say ministry is still going to happen, but the Lord was calling me to go kind of deeper into the trenches of human brokenness and offer a hand, offer a space for some people to show up and to bring their brokenness, but also to bring their the things that they're struggling with and wrestling with in all capacities. So yes, that's mental, yes, that's emotional, but also it's spiritual too. There's lots of people that struggle with religious wounds and misunderstandings of God's character, and so to kind of leave behind the program ministry and devote time specifically just towards meeting people one-on-one, an hour at a time, was a turn. But to me, it was it's ministry and it's sacred space, and it's meeting people where transformation really does happen.
Yeah, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I wonder, so you step out of programmatic ministry, and I'm sure that was scary in some ways. You entered into a program. I think you did your work at Indiana Wesleyan.
Yes.
So what is it that the language, the discourse, the expertise, the practices of your training, your formal professional training in becoming a mental health provider, what did that add for you? What value did that language and those tools give you that you didn't have, or that are not necessarily there? And I know we're going to look at some of the stories of how the Bible kind of opens up the conversation, but what is it that your training gave you that your ministry training just didn't equip you for?
Great question. Immediately, it's understanding, some of the, giving you frameworks in order to look at people. So going and studying psychology and getting your master's in clinical mental health counseling, you're going to study so many frameworks to understand, how to see people and how to see their problems, and then how to help bring resolution. So, you're looking at lots of different psychologists and social workers that have gone before to give you frameworks of understanding people, to understanding things like anxiety or depression, or and then to give you training to kind of understand, how do we actually get people out of these deep, dark places that are mental. And sometimes a diagnosis is needed, and sometimes it's not, in the sense of there's a spectrum where everyone kind of falls. So if I said, hey, I struggle with anxiety, and you said, hey, me too, more than likely we're not in the same place of where anxiety kind of hits us. And sometimes for people, everyone's going to struggle with anxiety, but for some people, it becomes this, it's disrupting my life and my everyday life. And that's where we say, okay, the distinguishing between what's normal anxiety, and that's hard to handle sometimes too, but then if it's disruptive and maladaptive to your everyday life, then that is something that we need to pay attention to. And I didn't have the tools to help someone walk through that. I didn't have the frameworks. I didn't have the training to know, and even to understand the medications that might come, that might be needed, because sometimes medication is needed to help people on their journey to just finding themselves again and finding a place where they're more settled and they're more at peace and they're more whole. And so for me, the disconnect between all this ministry training and then helping people kind of in the mental health kind of placement, the bridge was to go to school and to get that training. And honestly, they'd require you to continue to have more schooling and more trainings, because a 2-year program going full in, it does not cover everything. Sure. So I'm still learning, and this is still kind of a newer path.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I do think that, so I come at the conversation about mental health and wholeness as it relates to someone's spiritual life as a pastor. And so I've been a pastor since 2008, and over the course of that period of time, almost 2 decades, I've seen people at their highest height and their lowest low, at their best and their worst. And one of the things I've recognized as a pastor is that there's some things that I'm not equipped to handle that really do require professional, mental, and emotional support. If someone's going to get to a place of stability, and then ultimately spiritual thriving and flourishing. And so I have an immense respect for professional mental health providers. And what I've learned is that that people carry really heavy things. And maybe that's you. Maybe you are carrying something extraordinarily heavy, whether it's anxiety or depression. I've engaged with people that have experienced suicidal ideation, people that have dealt with real difficult things. And if that's you, I would encourage you to seek out mental and emotional support, whatever that looks like. If you're in the space, it may look like going online and just looking at psychology today and finding a mental health provider where you are. There are a lot of people that will see you on the basis of insurance, and so it can be cost effective. If you're on a college campus, there are tons of resources that you can engage. I would encourage you to do that. If you are in a place where you're experiencing depression and suicidal ideation, there's a hotline that you can reach out to 24/7, 365 988. It's a hotline with people that I've talked to folks. They're amazing in helping you work through what you're experiencing. Call that number. If you just need somebody to talk to immediately, I would encourage you to do that. But what I would say to you, Katie, is that one of the things I've seen in you is this maturing of the range of your work with people, and you've always been an incredibly good listener, and very attuned to what's going on in a person. Give us maybe like one of the mental and emotional frameworks that of your study that you're attracted to the most, or that you find most helpful in your work, that if you're not a professional that we might not know,
Sure.
What would be a framework for someone experiencing kind of base level anxiety that's super helpful?
Yeah. I tend to really connect with like narrative therapy. And so that's looking at the story that you tell yourself matters. And so asking somebody the question of like, what are your thoughts telling you? What's the story in your head about this thing that's happening or about this anxiety? Looking at it from a story lens is a good way. And then having potentially like seeing, if it's anxiety, seeing that as this externalizing thing that kind of comes in like a storm that blows in. So we kind of like tell it like a story. Like this anxiety tends to be big, like a lightning storm, or maybe I'd have a client talk about, is it a hurricane or is it a tornado or what? Like give me your version of the metaphor for your whatever the anxiety is, but like let's name what it looks like, let's name how it rolls in, let's name how long it lasts, let's look at it like a story, and then to tell ourselves and challenge ourselves that we can change the narrative that we're telling ourselves, that we can change the story, and that's not always it's not just, hey, change the way you think about it and this thing goes away. That's not what I'm saying. But it is important to ask the question of what is the story that we are telling ourselves, because the story that we tell ourselves, the story that we tell ourselves about who God is, that matters. And sometimes we tell ourselves the wrong story. Sometimes we have a faulty narrator, and sometimes we need to challenge the voice that we are speaking to or about to say, maybe I could tell this story in a different way. And if I see it in a different way, maybe that does change the posture or the perspective in which I'm viewing my life.
Yeah, I appreciate in the Bible reading plan for this week that you remind us that the Bible offers us a different narrative around our emotional pain. And you may not recognize this, that if you're reading the Bible, they're real human lives. And a lot of times the Bible is more open and honest about these things than we often are. I think we're in the American South, and we tend to hide things that are, or experience shame or guilt around some of these matters. And you just remind us that in the Bible, Elijah collapses under a tree and he's exhausted. David writes poems around grief and despair. Mary and Martha are genuinely, openly angry with God. There's the full range of emotional pain that's there. Jesus himself is completely overwhelmed with sorrow, and in the face of death, he's completely anguished. What is it that the Bible offers a person in terms of helping them name what's going on and changing the narrative?
I think first off, the Bible offers us this it normalizes the struggle with mental health and emotional health as part of being a human, that it is normal to struggle. It is normal to feel anxious and overwhelmed and stressed, to feel emotionally depleted, that it doesn't mean that something is wrong with your faith, that you are not praying enough, or that you are not faithful enough, or that you are not being a devoted Christian enough, that mental health is not connected to your own productivity of working out your faith and salvation, that struggling with mental health is just part of being human. It's part of living in a broken world, and that we're carrying real things. And I think what the Bible shows us is that God meets people right where they are in the midst of it. He doesn't say, clean up first. He meets us in the struggle, in the wrestle, in the heartache, and he's there. It says, and David writes that the Lord is near to the brokenhearted. He binds up their wounds, that that his presence, that he talks about his ear is leaning down, bent low to hear, that he invites us to cast our cares on him. He genuinely cares for us. And so I think it's important to see that the Bible doesn't tell you, in order for you to follow Jesus, you need to get everything together mentally, physically, emotionally. What the Bible tells us is that God meets us in our brokenness, and that he uses people that are broken to carry out his message and his purposes to the world. And that sometimes people are healed and sometimes they're not. Sometimes the struggle goes away and sometimes it doesn't. What does that say about God? What does that say about his character? And that's why the narration matters of the story that we're telling ourselves about who God is, that God is faithful. But what if God hasn't been faithful to us in this kind of way? What if he hasn't taken away the anxiety? What if there is still anguish? What if there's still depression? Like, what if God hasn't rescued us from these places? How do you handle those kinds of questions for people?
I think that at a moment where I was kind of faced with an individual who was at the end of their rope, I reached out to a mental health provider, and they offered, and I just said, what do I do? And they essentially just said, connect people to resources and relationships. And so I would say that you have more resources available to you than you realize. And so actively engage the resources that are available to you. At the very least, be aware of them if you're in a healthy spot, so that you can offer them to your friends, or be aware of them when you might need them yourself. And then also, I think you have to intentionally build your support system, and that has to. You don't have to carry the hard parts of life by yourself. There are pieces of it that are uniquely yours to carry, but also there are times where you can't carry it by yourself, and you have to, leaning on your support system. First off, it's build a support system of relationships, and then lean on them at the times where you need them. Yeah. Those are probably the two things. You have more resources and more people around you that actually genuinely desire for you to experience health and wholeness than you even realize. You just have to open yourself to it. And for me, the hardest part is actually asking for help. That's the issue. This is a heavy week if you're engaging the Bible reading plan, but I think an important one on the journey we're taking through the summer, and one that I think you can come back to again and again beyond the summer when you're needing some help thinking about what it might look like for you to experience not just holiness but wholeness in your life. Any last words for this week before we set up next week?
I just say that, encourage you that if you are nervous about taking that first step to ask for help, to reach out, that the person sitting across from you cares so much for you, that is not coming from a judgment place, that wants to help carry and help you to really be, whether that's find wholeness or find parts of healing or help you manage the thing that you're carrying, that they genuinely care. And but it's also about finding the right person to sit across from. And so if you've had a not great experience, I talk with a lot of people and they talk about their experiences with a mental health professional and feeling like it wasn't great. And so I just want to encourage you to try again. Sometimes it takes finding a couple people first, and then you might have to go through a few people to find the right fit. But it can be a hardship. So if you're in that place, I just want to encourage you to keep going, and to look for the right person, because it's a dance that needs the right person and the right partner to kind of meet you with in it. So keep going.
Thank you for being with us this week. We've been on a journey. We've looked at belovedness and identity. We looked at calling and purpose. We looked at being made for community and partnering with God's work and rest and discernment and mental health. If you've missed some of the previous conversations, I encourage you to go back and look at them and take in those videos. Next week is an important week because we're going to be talking about living sent on God's mission in the world. So you won't want to miss that one. So stick with us.
See you then.